Thank you all so much for joining me tonight. I'm going to introduce every person coming in individually. We're very honored to have our co-panelists as well. If I can ask Anne Spalter, who's an artist and a collector, to come in. Then if I can kindly ask Sebastian Fahey, who's the managing director for Sotheby's. And if it's for the filming. And if I can ask Rashid Al-Shashaf, artist from Saudi Arabia, to join us on the stage. And last but definitely not least, if I can ask Pablo Fraile to join us, who I think just flew in today, and thank you so much for joining us in Saudi Arabia. So I'm going to start the panel with a question to Rashid. And we were discussing this briefly, and it's a fascinating project that you have. And as a Saudi artist, you had a project that was around 2017 and 2018 that had to do with digital art, with technology and the local community. And I was wondering if you can elaborate more on this and tell us more about this experience and about your path and your journey in this world.
طيب أول شيء أهلا بالجميع. حقيقي يعني أنا اليوم أستكمل مشروعي الاختباري لعمل ريشان. اليوم هو جزء لا يتجزأ من العمل أساساً. في 2017 شجع أو يعني تفاعلت كثير جدا مع حركة البلوكشين في العالم، وكيف قدرة البلوكشين على خلق مساحات جديدة في التعاطي مع الحياة المعاصرة، وكيف إنه العملة الإلكترونية اليوم قادرة على الحل محل العملات الورقية أو العملات التقليدية القديمة. كان في تساؤل ضخم جدا، هل يا ترى في الحياة المعاصرة المستقبلية سنرى أعمال فنية تترجم على منصات البلوكشين أو على المنصات الرقمية أو على الويب بمختلف تخصصاته ومراحله؟ ريشان هي أرض مزرعة اقتناها أجدادي بكيس من جراد أيام جوع قبل ظهور النفط وقبل توحيد الجزيرة العربية. كانت الناس تمر بجوع شديد جدا، فكانوا أجدادي يمتلكون كيس من جراد قايضوا فيه هذه الأرض، وأصبحت هذه المقايضة مقايضة حياة بالنسبة للآخرين. اليوم العملات الإلكترونية هي أساليب جديدة للمقايضة. قمت ببرمجة ما يوازي عدد سكان الأرض في 2017 على منصة إثيريوم. يقابل هذه البرمجة برنامج ساعدني فيه أخي ويحضر اليوم من يعني وأنا سعيد بحضوره اليوم معنا لأنه هو مبرمج أصلا ما له علاقة بالفنون. برمجنا هذا العدد من العقود الذكية على إثيريوم، وبإمكان أي شخص اليوم يقتني عقد هو يعتبر عقد فني يستطيع من خلاله إدخاله إلى برنامج متخصص. البرنامج المتخصص يذهب إلى جوجل إيرث، يختار أرض في العالم عشوائيا بناء على الرموز اللي أنت يعني اقتنيتها، ويبرمج ويحول هذه الأرض إلى شفرة بإمكانك طباعتها، ويعني يكون عندك يا العقود الذكية أو الطبعة، وبإمكانك أيضا استعادة العقود الذكية بإعادة الطبعة إلى منشئ هذا العمل الفني، بحيث أنه إحنا ممكن ننشئ. كنا في وقتها نرغب في إنشاء إدارة متخصصة لهذا المشروع. مارسيل دوشام بيقول العمل الفني لا يكتمل حتى يتفاعل الجمهور معه. في 2018 تم عرض مشروع ريشان بالتوازي مع أسبوع الفن في 2139 مجلس الفن السعودي،
اللي هو كمان يومين كله هيحضر طبعا،
كلها في يومين يعني إن شاء الله. نعم حنتشرف، واليوم حاضر معنا الأستاذ محمد حافظ يعني عضو مجلس مجلس الفن السعودي. في 2018 عندما عرضت العمل يعني حقيقة من تفاعل مع العمل بالشكل الذي رغبت هم 3 أشخاص، ويحضروني بالأسماء وبالأشكال، لأن وقتها كانت الناس غير مدركة تماما لتفاصيل ما أقوم أنا بعمله. يمكن في منطقة موازية غير مساحة الفنون كان فيه يعني تفاعل مع البلوكشين ومع العقود الذكية مع الويب الثاني والويب الثالث، لكن في منطقة الفنون يمكن عشان أنا معلم أساساً لموهوبين متخصصين في الساينس وأعلمهم فن، فأدرك حجم الفروقات بين العقل الهندسي والعقل الفني. عشان كذا يعني كان المجتمع غير قادر على تلك الفترة على استقبال المشروع. أيضا يعني في وقت إقامة المعرض كانت وزارة المالية وقتها تحذر من استخدام العقود المخصصة أو العملة الإلكترونية أو العقود الذكية على منصات المنصات الويب. اليوم احنا في مرحلة مرة جديدة. اليوم المملكة العربية السعودية تسابق الزمن. جزء من العمل الفني مقدار حجم التفاعل أو تفاعل مؤسسة زي طبعا وزارة الثقافة ممثلة في هيئة الفنون البصرية وبينالي الدرعية مع هذه الممارسة المعاصرة اللي اليوم تصير في جميع أنحاء العالم. جزء من العمل الفني يعني بدأ يشع له النور من جديد. يعني حقيقي أنا فترة طويلة جدا كان في بعض الأشخاص يحدثني عن هذا العمل، وخاصة أخي كل ما ظهر مشروع مشابه في أي مكان في العالم يقوم يرسل لي يقول لي أتيت في الوقت غير المناسب. أنا أقول يكفيني شرف أنه أنا حاولت وما زلت عندي رغبة لاستكمال هذا المشروع، وجزء من استكمال هذا المشروع اليوم اللي جالس يصير من حوار ونقاش للذهاب إلى مناطق مرة جديدة. اليوم إحنا نسابق الزمن يعني خلينا نقول لإيجاد بصمة مختلفة في مجال الفنون ودمج الفنون بالتقنيات المعاصرة. هذا باختصار جدا شديد للمشروع.
شكرا جدا راشد، ميرسي جدا. Pablo, if I can throw it to you now and say, because you had discussed briefly that there's more to art than NFTs are more than just art. And I think from what Rashid was just speaking about, and I hope you got it all from the translation, better than my translation in the green room, if we can elaborate on that point, it would be very interesting to pick up from where he left off.
Certainly. Well, first of all, I wanted to say thank you because I'm very honored to be with this team's panelists, and thank you to Sotheby's, thank you to the Visual Art Commission, and to the Ministry of Culture. It's really exciting what's happening here. Before I start this, all to say is that in my opinion, there's two things happening culturally very significantly in the global scale, which is digital art, tokenized digital art, as well as what's happening here in Saudi Arabia. So congratulations, it's very exciting. Now, to expand on that, I think that the NFT ecosystem is generating a lot of interest globally, and everything it's very innovative. There's an explosion of talent innovation happening in the space, but I think it will benefit everybody moving forward if we can segment the different, let's say, asset classes within the ecosystem. There's a clear path for digital art. There's a clear path for collectibles. There's a clear path for land, digital land, for gaming. And I think that overall, this is the path that is generally going to take moving forward. But it's very exciting because we're seeing how this technology is allowing for that again that unlocking of all this innovation and creativity that was there presently before. Because as we move into the future, most of us are always used to dealing with everything digital, always with a computer, always with a phone, and it's just normal that all the creative aspects of the new generation happen through the digital domain. So it's a very exciting time, and I'm very much looking forward to that.
And if I can continue with you, I just want to ask you as a collector, how did you start and what triggered this leap into NFT as a patron of NFT, as a patron of this domain? You were ahead of the curve in sort of in becoming part of this field. So if you can just elaborate as being a patron and what you see yourself, what's your role as a patron of in the world of NFTs?
Well, yes, I'll try to be brief, but I think there's two components that really put me in this situation. On one side, what I did in my professional life, I was very involved in the blockchain since a few years. But on the other side, I was lucky enough that I was brought up in a family that was always very close to culture. I grew up in architecturally forward-thinking homes, always close to art, traveling to cultural events and to cultural events, and it was something. Just culture was always very embedded in my family. In addition to that, I have a partner as well who is very embedded in the cultural side. So when I found out that the same technology that I knew very well was being applied to art, and that this art could be more engaging and more interoperable between the digital and physical domains, it was the perfect merger of both worlds. That was a few years ago. It was a very different ecosystem back then. There were very few participants, and it was very engaging. My journey was really beautiful because, I started this as a passion, as a hobby, as something that I really like doing, and pushing the ecosystem forward. So through my collecting or my patronage in the space, I've been able to be alongside many of the known artists of today. I know that we have the exhibition there where we have some pieces from Pac. I've been very close to other like Rafika Nadol and others that have gone through Sotheby's, and it was a beautiful journey because I was able to assist them in everything outside of the creative part. So I never tell the artists what they need to create. I think that they're the professionals, they're the creatives. That's up to them. But I've always been very active in telling them in which marketplace should you do this. Which collector should you approach? What's the pricing or the structure of your work? How does this work play into the overall ecosystem of your career? Even some PR and communications, maybe some accounting, some things outside of their life. And the journey, I did this because I liked it, because it was wonderful. I personally never took a cent for doing this, and it has meant two very important things. On one side, I've been able to foster a very strong relationship with all of these artists. That is not a transactional relationship, but rather a trust, a friendship, a partnership really in their artistic career, which is very differential, and for me, what really makes me wake up every day and participate in what I do. And secondly, as well, we've been able to, through the process, collect what is widely known today as the most important digital art, tokenized digital art collection in the world, which is a beautiful journey in its own. So it has been a wonderful thing to see this ecosystem grow as it has.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know it was a long trip for you to get here, so I really want to thank you. Sebastian, I just wanted to touch upon the shift that we've seen in the buying habits in the last 18 months. So from like a traditional art perspective, I was discussing in the Middle Eastern art market, 2010, 2011, 2012, was like a huge frenzy in the buying market, and in the past 3 years we've seen like a calm, we've seen a calibration. What's happening in the NFT market now in the last 18 months, and where are we now, and what's the situation?
Yeah, so NFTs are not new. The very first NFT minted is in the exhibition here, Kevin McCoy's Quantum, which was minted in May 3rd, 2014. So there's like 7 years since the idea of an NFT, an artwork being put on the blockchain and then traded. In the last 2 years, there's been and particularly the last 18 months, there's been a meteoric rise in the number of people who are interacting, who are collecting NFTs. There's a very large rise in the number of artists and also IP holders who are using this technology to bring things forward, to mint their digital assets as an NFT. Sotheby's started selling NFTs back in April of last year, and the first sale that we had was a sale of Pac, and we saw 3,000 buyers come into this sale. That's the first time that in the 18 years that I've been at Sotheby's we've had a sale with 3,000 buyers in. We were blown away by the global nature of the communities that formed around this collecting. So we had people from 38 countries participate in that sale. On average, our NFT buyers so far, and we've only been selling NFTs for just less than a year now, but on average, our buyers have been 10 years younger than our traditional collectors. But the level of understanding, the level of communities that are building around NFT projects is just growing day by day. Metrics suggest that there's around 3 million digital wallets that have interacted with NFTs. That doesn't mean there's 3 million people who have collected NFTs, because some people have more than one wallet, but on average, in a month, there's around 300,000 wallets that are interacting with NFTs. And that is growing month by month. If you look at OpenSea as the biggest marketplace, let's say the eBay of NFTs, in January alone, they did around $4 billion worth of NFT sales, which was over 2 million individual trades of NFTs. So the level of adoption, the level of interest is really growing, and we see from the level of investment into digital art the artists that we hear that are wanting to have their first interactions with NFTs, the amount of collectors that we're talking about who want to buy their first NFT, to collect, to understand, to feel comfortable with the technology, to start collecting, the number of brands, the number of IP holders who are also looking to come into the space. We can only see this growing and continue to grow sort of exponentially from here.
So as someone from like the traditional art world, this has been a huge learning curve for me, and I hope it was a huge learning curve for everyone in the audience. And Anne, I wanted to ask you, like, as an artist, usually, and you can talk, Pablo, about it as a patron as well, usually, as an artist, there are a lot of speculators in the market. So usually in the traditional art world, a gallery can act like a bodyguard against these speculators and sort of make sure the art is being placed with people who will not flip your work, who will not sort of make a quick buck because you're like a up-and-coming or like an artist that's a hot artist. As a digital artist, as an NFT artist, can you protect that, or can you limit the buyers, and how does this come into the picture?
Thanks, that's a great question, and I just want to say I'm so honored to be here for a second evening, and thanks to the Visual Arts Commission and the Ministry of Culture, and of course Sotheby's, who brought me here. It's a little bit different in the NFT world because there is not such a, people don't look down on the flipping of the artworks as much as in the traditional world, but there are mechanisms that you could use. So it depends somewhat if what kind of platform you put your NFT on, and then how you choose to sell it, whether you have a buy now price, in which case anyone can buy it and you can't control who buys it. Or you could put it on an auction that doesn't have a particular time limit, and bids come in, and then you can see who's placing them if they're not completely anonymous. And if it's someone who you don't want to own your art, or they're known to be flipping them very quickly or selling them maybe even for just a little bit more than they bought them for, or less, which has happened if people need to raise money, then you could just not accept that bid. So you do have
you can reject a bid.
Yeah, you don't need to, depending how the auction is structured.
I don't think, does that work at Sotheby's as well?
There's different ways to hold an
Okay.
Yeah, so there's different styles, English, Dutch. I've learned so much more about auctioning now that I've gotten into the NFT world. So you can set it up so you don't have to take the bid. And you can also do a private sale, which you can do by minting your own work, or even on one of the platforms where you mint it but don't put a buy now price, and you agree to immediately take a bid from someone who you've already discussed the work with in advance, and that's actually very common.
But also one of the things is that there's an amazing artist resale, right, sort of formula in the NFT world that's not really what we see in the regular art world.
Absolutely, and it's such a huge thing, speaking from the point of view as of an artist, to have a work be resold and get money from that, a royalty from that, is a wonderful experience that artists in the United States do not have because there are no enforced royalties and no one gets them. In Europe, the situation is different. But in the NFT world, it's often 10% royalties. So if someone buys your work and then a few months later sells it for twice as much, you get paid again. Your floor price has gone up, the lowest amount that your work sells for. So it's not always a bad thing. There's much more resale than in the traditional art world, but it's helpful for the artists for the most part. So it's kind of, people's outlook on that has changed.
Is there anything that you wanted?
I think that was a fantastic answer in every way. I would just add that there's different distribution methods, as you were saying, of auctions. I would just add that the speculators, they're not necessarily a bad thing. It's actually, I would say that in many ways they fueled what happened here. As we know, the blockchain space created a great wealth generation in the last few years, and we had a lot of the participants of that space coming in together and unfortunately treating these as financial assets or commodities, to make as another trading mechanism. The reality, however, is that it also served to get this ecosystem on the map, to get some larger sales, a lot of interest, and a lot of people involved. And while it's not where we want to be in a few years, where everything is about flippers and traders, the reality is that I would also not completely disconnect them from what's happening here, in the same way that there are flippers and traders in the traditional art world as well. And then when one of the things about how do you maybe maintain some of the flippers out, I think that right now there's a few of the platforms that are out there that have become very good at putting works in the ecosystem, in the blockchain, but very few of them or none of them are really giving all the support that I was talking about before from the artist. And a way of controlling is whether it's through a gallerist or through the way that you do, the method that you contribute to the space, how the platforms participate in the space, that they can control the audience a little bit more of who's going to interact with them. It's also, again, not only how you do the auctions, but how you structure the actual collection that you're trying to sell can help for this.
And Pablo mentioned galleries, so galleries still function, and you can send your NFT to your gallerist's wallet.
Which you've started doing right now.
And then they can place it just as they would place any traditional work of art.
Super, super important. I'm a big, big fan of this. I think that one of the small issues that we have with the ecosystem now is that everything is the ethos of the blockchain, the ethos of decentralization is very, very important for everybody. I find that NFTs are a tool. We'll talk, I think, a little bit later about what NFTs are, but I think that NFTs are a tool for just further engagement, easier interoperability, and easier interaction. And I welcome the know-how, the experience, and the value added that many of these institutions from the traditional ecosystem can bring into the space. And I think it's going to really curate and raise the quality of a lot of the works that are being put there. So I'm a huge fan of that.
I think another difference too with the NFT world as opposed to traditional worlds is you could have someone buy your work and put it in a shipping container and no one sees it ever again. And in the NFT world, it doesn't matter who bought it or how many times it was flipped. It's always visible to anyone who wants to see it.
And just going one step further, there is a lot more people in the, that we're seeing in the months as screen technology increases, and people are bringing their digital art home. Digital art's been displayed in the same way that someone would display a canvas. They're appreciating their art in their collections, holding it for longer, buying for longer term, not just speculating, seeing their digital art as an asset, but also seeing it as part of a fundamental part of their art collection as well. And I think that will continue to rise as the adoption and the screen technology changes to become better suited for NFTs and digital art to be brought home.
Yeah, and it's wonderful as an artist and educator seeing people come into this field. Sometimes just they wanted to make money and they start buying these NFTs, and then they don't want to sell them because they get attached to them, because that's what happens when you have real artwork in your life.
And you get the collecting bug.
Yeah, and I've seen people post, it hurt me so much to sell this. I see those more and more frequently, and it's just wonderful seeing so many people become art collectors.
I think, sorry, just adding to this point, because I think it's fascinating. I think that one of the big wins from the digital art ecosystem is that it's more approachable for the majority of the people. So NFTs have really become a tool for, I come to realize that everybody likes culture. Everybody likes to experience artistic experiences. And, before in the past, I'm not going to lie, for some, you go into some of these institutions and it's the first time that you start going there, it's not the easiest, the most welcoming place for a newcomer. And I think that when you can interact directly online and get information from the community in the way that we can in the NFT ecosystem, I think that's allowing a lot more people to come and participate. And I think it's a huge win for what the NFT brings. Yeah.
Rashid, I wanted to ask you about your experience with the digital community in Saudi Arabia, and what has your experience been? What's your advice for young artists? And I know there are many questions. Sorry, أنا ممكن أسأل بالعربي، أنا ليه بتكلم بالإنجليزي؟ متأسفة. يعني إيه الأدفايس اللي ممكن تديه للشباب اللي داخل في عالم الديجيتال آرت، وإيه طموحاتك للمستقبل في عالم الديجيتال آرت؟ يعني أتمنى أسمع رأيك.
طبعا يعني الحقيقة الحديث عن مجمل العملية والنظام في إنتاج وبيع وتداول أساسا أعمال فنية من خلال ال NFT يخضع أساسا خلينا أقول لك ليش اشتراك 3 عقول ليس عقل واحد يعني في الفنون التقليدية. خلينا ناخذ منظور آخر. الفنون التقليدية أحيانا أنت تمارس عملك الفني من خلال دماغك وممكن حتى تعرضه في صالون بيتك والناس تيجي تنبسط وتعيش معاه، ممكن تنزل حتى على السوشيال ميديا ويكون كافي. حتى تفاعل الجاليري أو إدارة الجاليري مع الموضوع ما يتعدى إطار اللوحة. اليوم في ال NFT يعني تخضع يعني عندنا مجموعة من الشروط الجديدة اللي من خلالها يعني يجب أن يتحالف العقل الإلكتروني البرمجي لخلق أعمال فنية مختلفة، وفي نفس الوقت يكون في منصات قادرة لاستيعاب هذه الأعمال. فعندنا يعني شيء له علاقة بالمال، وشيء له علاقة والاقتصاد، وشيء له علاقة بالبرمجة والإلكترونيات، والفنان اللي هو العنصر الأساسي في الموضوع. اليوم الفنان يعني على مر التاريخ على مر العصور هو بينتقل أساساً من خلال ممارسته الفنية لتحقيق ذاته. يمكن ركزوا الأخوان في الفترة الماضية على الحديث عن الجوانب المالية والاقتصادية للفنان، لكن أنا أقول أغلب الفنانين يمكن يهتموا أكثر مش بالناحية المالية أكثر من قيمة الأنا اللي يحققها من خلال عمله الفني. وهنا تيجي العقدة الرئيسية في كون عالم الكريبتو، عالم ال NFT والفنون الرقمية تخضع لشروط مرة مختلفة تحافظ على العمل، انتقاله سهل، بيعه يصير أسهل في مستوى تحقيق الذات من خلاله، لكن الفنان حيجي بقصة مرة مختلفة. أنا في اعتقادي الشخصي إنه الفنانين لما أتوا مثلا ما بعد الكاميرا أضافوا للحياة في يعني في إجمالها قصة جديدة. في الفنون المعاصرة أيضا أضافوا قصة جديدة وخلقوا مناطق جديدة وأساليب جديدة للحياة. اليوم الفنانين أنا في اعتقادي الشخصي حيضيفوا أساسا للمبرمجين والإلكترونيين والعالم الموازي قصة جديدة. اليوم إحنا نحظى بهذه الفرصة لخلق هذه القصص في المستقبل. يمكن بعد سنة من اليوم ما نتعاطى أساسا مع ال NFT زي ما إحنا نتكلم اليوم، لأنه القصص صارت سريعة في التغيير، يعني بقدر ما هو هذا التغيير مخيف بقدر ما هو مذهل جدا. الحديث عن هذه الأمور أحيانا يسبق الفكرة الداخلية، ولكن اليوم في المملكة العربية السعودية جيل شاب عنده رغبة لقراءة المستقبل بطريقة مرة مختلفة، قريبين جدا من الكمبيوتر والديجيتال، فقادرين أساسا على فهم العمل الفني من خلال الرقمنة أكثر من العمل التقليدي، يلتصقون بهذه الأشياء. أنا ذهلت بالأمس لما دخلت على هذه القاعة وجدتها مليئة. كنت يعني أتصيد الفرص لملاحظة من موجود من الفنانين التقليديين، لاحظت عدد لا بأس به، لكن اليوم ال NFT جذبت يعني أشخاص جدد وحيضيفوا للحركة الفنية التفاعلية الثقافية في المملكة العربية السعودية وفي العالم بطريقة مرة جديدة ومختلفة.
ميرسي، شكرا. وأتمنى أن أنت تكون حضرت المعرض اللي كان موجود ورا عندنا هنا.
أكيد.
بس طبعا وإحنا I hope everyone got a chance to see the exhibition we have in the back, which is really what would be like a museum quality exhibition and a fantastic showcasing of NFTs, some of the most expensive NFTs, some of the rarest NFTs, and we have the inclusion of a young Saudi artist, Ahd Al-Amoudi, who was with us on the first day. And Pablo, I wanted to ask you, when will the institutions be joining? And institutions, I mean museums. When will this be a game changer? Will this change in the perspective of the critique and the curation? The positives and I know it's a loaded question. Positives and negatives that come along with it. And what are we going to be seeing there?
Yeah, so I think it's a very important part of this evolving, and I really don't see any negatives. I think that the introduction of institutions, particularly museums, it's really going to act as a validator for the space, as the tastemaker, not the tastemaker, but really as the validator of the space. So I really welcome that. I cannot comment too many things, but I can assure you that there's going to be some announcements, some major announcements from some of the world renowned museums in the world say that they're going to start opening up to considering this. Of course, it's going to be a slower process. This is not going to be interacted tomorrow, but the interest is certainly all there it's happening. And again, I only positive things. It acts as the great validator. I think the market and the audience has already done that, but you know, with the introduction of the museums, it really closes the circle, and it's the piece that is missing for full validation.
We have one of your works on view, and I would love to hear your viewpoint on this work that we have there.
Well, I mean, this work is fantastic for so many reasons. First of all, because you know, it comes from Pak, which you alluded to before. I think Pak is likely the most important creator of this generation. He has such a deep understanding of the medium, of the tools that they use for the creativity, and they're just a very, very advanced group. In particular, this work is very special because it's very different. It's actually so it's a little bit technical to explain, and I'm not the creator like he is, but it's a vector file that's constantly being generated. That changes over time. It's a circle that is shrink with the passage of time, and that reproduces itself once it's changed from a wallet to another wallet with a new color palette and going back to the full circle. And again, it's not a video. It's a vector file that is constantly being generated, a permanent vector file. So it's just a fascinating work in every regard. In particular, that work, you know, it was purchased not that long ago. And I thought, you know, I think that, again, it's one of the most important releases that Pak has ever done, if not the most important he's ever done, or they've ever done, so you wouldn't know who Pak is. Yeah, just excited that it's part of the collection. I can be a good steward for it. But I really welcome everybody to go see the exhibition. Not only that work, but many of the works that are there are extremely important. And in particular, if you want to learn about Pak and about that work, I think that anybody is going to find intellectual stimulation by learning about that work. It's fascinating.
And a work like this simply could not exist without this technology. There is no canvas, there is no other medium in the art world that a work like this could come to form. So one of the ways that we've been looking at NFT technology is that it is a new medium for the art world. And when we look back at the institution question as well, that it is, there is no, as you said, no negatives here of why this art form, digital art represented in using NFT technology, represented on the blockchain, will come in like any other artwork, just, you know, a new canvas in a way.
Super important, this in particular, what you say, it's this work is digitally native, and while I respect, at least in my collection, I also collect analog or traditional work. Of course, I'm an art collector, I just have a concentration on this, but it's, for me, at least the digital work is very important that it becomes digitally native, as you said, that they utilize the tools, they utilize the medium well. I find that less exciting when it's a physically made, analog made, either a painting or a sculpture, and then taking a picture and then translate it to the digital side. I think that, again, these digitally created works are what's going to fuel this next growth in this ecosystem.
With Anne also having a...
yeah, I was just going to take it back to Anne and talk about the work you have also, and just a small Sotheby's plug, this will also be coming up for auction soon. Sorry, I have to. This is going to be coming up for auction soon, the work we have by Anne that's in the exhibition. So if you can also elaborate a bit on your work, that'd be very, very informative.
Absolutely. The work, if you go in there, is the super crazy Highway from the Future video piece. And it was a particularly fun one to make because I've been working with artificial intelligence, and there's different ways that you can work with programs by giving algorithms sets of images and getting different things back, for instance. But for this one, it's using a process called text to image, which is exactly what it sounds like, where you type in a phrase and you get back an image or even an entire video sequence. And it sounds magical, and it is magical to use. It's very fun. It's something anyone here in the audience can play with and do, and opens up, I think, visual creation to people that might have felt, I can't draw or use a camera to take a great photo. It's a whole new way of making work that is very enjoyable and has a very low barrier to entry. The piece was inspired to me by the Laurie Anderson song Big Science, which came out when I was in college and influenced my thinking a lot. And she's a real pioneer of technology and art as well. And she has a line in it, The Wonder of It All, which is the name of the piece. And she says the highways and the networks and the malls. And so I actually literally typed in sentences from the song, in addition to some things, themes from my own work, and some starter images that I supplied, and it made that piece. There's also some technological innovation in there in changing the phrase as the video is being rendered to build up a sense of narrative. So, which doesn't happen if you have just one phrase that's being used for every frame of the image.
Wow.
Honestly, revolutionary. Really.
When is the auction? I'll be around.
When is the auction, Michael? You can ask Michael. I'm sure he'll be happy to let you know all the details. So as we talk about this is the NFT technology. It is spreading. It's not spreading only to our life in the art world, but no one 20 years ago could have imagined you could have a computer completely in your hand, in your handheld device. Will we be seeing this technology about the NFTs incorporated in different elements of our life, in different systems, besides the art world? And I leave this open to anyone who would like to take the question or would like to answer. Please feel free.
I have a really short answer because I think other people here can answer that
Please.
better. But one of the exciting things, there are a lot of uses, and there's also an expansion of what one considers the art world. So although I think it is important, now that sites have collectibles and gaming stuff and fine art, it's also exciting that those definitions sometimes are not so clear, and that maybe something is a game, but it's also a really great work of art. It's interactive, that there are many new definitions of even what art is, never mind what other things can be put in, that will happen with NFTs.
So we've been seeing, obviously, digital artworks being minted as NFTs and brought to the market this way. We've also seen in the art world where a physical work has been accompanied by a digital twin. An example, we had a sale last week where we had works from the legendary watch designer Gerald Genter, where he painted a design for a watch before it was manufactured by the watch designers. So the Royal Oak is just celebrating its 50th years from Audemars Piguet. He designed that as a watercolor, starting with a circle with a compass, painted the watch, and then it was manufactured and has become one of the most coveted watches today. We sold that with a digital representation as an NFT, which also had a certificate of authenticity going all the way back to the family who are selling the physical design together, recorded on the blockchain. And we've also seen this idea of NFT technology being a way of certifying the authenticity of physical works, and I think there's a lot of use cases for that coming. Blockchain technology, and I think Pablo can speak to this very well, is being used in multiple ways beyond art as well. And we are going to continue to see real-life examples of blockchain technology coming into our day-to-day lives beyond the art world as well.
في اعتقادي الشخصي واحدة من الأشياء المهمة. أعيد؟ طيب. في اعتقادي الشخصي واحدة من أهم الخصائص الجديدة لوجود أعمال فنية رقمية مبرمجة على البلوكشين أو ال NFT هي إمكانية ازدواجية المقتني. في الأعمال الفيزيائية صعب جدا أن يقتني العمل شخصين أو ثلاثة أو أربعة. اليوم يعني حيخلق منصات يتشارك العمل مجموعة مقتنين، ويكون الوضع عادل جدا في التقسيم وفي التجزيء، لأنه يعني من الصعب جدا في السابق كتابة عقود يعني فيزيائية لخلق هذا التقسيم وهذا التجزيء، وخاصة الأعمال الفنية اللي تدخل الاستثمارات في البيع وفي الشراء. اليوم سهل موضوع الاقتناء، يعني بإمكان يصبح في اقتناء جماعي لبعض الأعمال الفنية، ما يشبه حالة استثمار مختلفة متضخمة يعني حتؤدي أو حتخلق أعمال فنية أساسا مختلفة. اليوم بإمكان مثلا العمل الفني يتجزأ إلى أجزاء أو يصبح أو يباع على أجزاء مختلفة، ليس كالسابق. يعني حنرى أو سنرى مواصفات جديدة لفنون تولد من خلال الفنون الرقمية، وهذا حيعطي بعد جديد جدا للفنون، وفي نفس الوقت حيعطي بعد جديد لحياة الإنسان في المستقبل.
Thank you.
I mean, I think that we're certainly going to see a lot of applications that coming from the NFT space. Again, as was briefly mentioned before, it's just normal that as people are used to interacting all the time with the digital everything, it's normal that all the creative needs and innovation comes from this domain. I would argue that NFTs in particular, well, cryptocurrencies, but in particular NFTs, and I don't want to go off too much to the technology side, but they're just as an important innovation as the concept of when the internet started. The same way that that was the first time that we could openly, globally distribute information and connect with information. I think that this is the same thing, but with value. And I personally believe that value is more important than information. So therefore, we're going to see a huge amount of interest and of driving force fueling the innovation and the changes here. But this leads me to, I think, some of the three components that I think are going to make this really take off, that I always mention as, there's the negative aspects of the ecosystem today, but I think are going to be the key to making things better. Number one is the user experience, where right now, unfortunately, it's a little bit difficult, it's slow, it's expensive, it's very technical if you don't know the blockchain well. And it can be a little bit risky, and I think the infrastructure is not evolving at the same pace as innovation. So I think that is something that if we really want this to become really mainstream, we're going to have to work a lot on that. On the second point, a little bit of the quality and curation control. As, again, we're starting to see how different, more specialized platforms are coming together. And I think that's going to really, when you start having really high quality and curated assets in the different asset classes within the ecosystem, I think it's going to help a lot more people really put the effort behind to innovate on what's happening there. And the third one is the environmentally, you alluded to before, I think it's important, the environmentally friendliness nature of what's happening here. The reality is that it's not a problem of the artist and of the collectors because it would happen anyhow through how the blockchain operates. But already today, we have the ability to do the same things that we're doing in the NFT ecosystem on Ethereum on much more efficient and much more advanced blockchains. And I expect that all these three together, as they come along together, are really going to help develop, again, a full stray of NFT sites that we can't even conceive today. The same way that when internet started, we couldn't conceive social media, we couldn't conceive even e-commerce. We're going to see this evolution at an even higher pace than we did with the internet.
Thank you so much. If you were here yesterday, you would have heard how technologically illiterate I am, and I'm Web 1, not Web 2, not Web 3, but I've been learning a lot. And as part of my knowledge, the growing knowledge of the world of NFTs and trying to compare it with my traditional art background, and when we started talking, we spoke about what is an NFT, how can I really contextualize it within the traditional art market. And then I heard about this something new, this whitelist. So the whitelist.
You like to be on list, right?
I want to be. I need to be on. I want to get on this whitelist. I need to get whitelists. So what are whitelists? How can I get on it? And can we elaborate on the? I need to get on this whitelist, but I need to know what the whitelist is. And I think everyone in the audience will be intrigued to know more about the whitelist.
Yeah, it's. I don't know. Is this working still? Yeah.
Yeah.
A whitelist is just a list of, in the case of the NFT world, wallet addresses that have early access to purchase, usually from a set of many things being put on the blockchain at once, like a big drop like art blocks or brain drops or something like that. So it's not usually used for one-of-one unique pieces, but if an artist is making 1,000 or 10,000 pieces, and they have a group of collectors, they want to make sure that they're able to buy the pieces, or institutions, they can put all those wallets on a list and say, during the first hour, only the people on the white list, you're totally going to be on, are able to buy the work. And it also helps prevent bots, which are computer programs that someone wrote that can buy a lot of sort of faked wallets and sometimes can buy out a whole collection before real collectors. So that kind of goes back to your first question about flippers, because bots are a problem.
So white lists are just a way that, like, I'm like a top collector in the NFT world. Like, I'm like the
VIP preview at Art Basel.
Exactly.
So you can go in and you can buy work.
I'm getting the PDF before everyone else.
Go in and
I'm getting the PDF before
sold out already.
Exactly, before everything is sold out.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to add anything on whitelists, or have we clarified that? I'm just very interested about whitelist, and I'm sure a lot of you didn't know that existed, and I just found that out. So
And I just, to go back to
I
the
don't know,
question
is our
you
mic
asked right
working?
before,
yes.
there are a lot of other things that you can do with NFTs aside. I mean, we're all obsessed with art because we're in the art world and true believers in art. But one of the exciting things I've seen recently is poetry NFTs. So if there's any group of people making less money than fine artists, it's poets. And it's been very exciting for me to see so many poets selling NFTs and doing really well. And then there's just a whole host of other things. So you can now, there's a platform selling TV moments where you can buy your favorite moments from a TV show. There's already a huge marketplace in sports moments, which is sort of like the sports card collectibles, but even more interesting. So I think there's going to be a lot of new economies of things that we didn't even think about buying and selling them before, but suddenly we're going to be really interested in them and want them.
And that sort of brings me to like my last question, in the fact that 2030, Vision 2030, is in 8 years. So where do we see the digital art movement going to? How's the patronage model changing? And where do we think digital art will be by the year 2030? And I'd love to hear everyone's opinion. It's all speculative, it's all hopeful, but I'd love to hear your opinion. So, Pablo, do you want to start, and we can move all the way back to Anne?
Sure, and again, take this with a grain of salt. This is only my opinion, and I've been wrong many more times than I've been right in my life. But the reality is that I personally think that this movement is the most important movement that we've seen in art history, at least in our lifetimes. It's really unlocking a completely new audience and creators that are really going to transform this. In 2030, I see this as a completely embedded part of the art market. It won't be like a separate a niche that is growing little by little. It'll be a very significant part, and it just makes sense that as this generation gets older, both the creators and the collectors, without any disrespect to any of the creators that are today, or the artists that are there today, but I think like somebody like Pac, for example, is going to have a much higher impact in the global history of arts than the most known traditional artist of today. I won't mention any names to not say that, but this is my humble opinion. I also think that it's going to be a lot easier to participate and participate in the ecosystem. And yeah, those are my two main thoughts. But the user experience is going to get much better. So you'll be able to interact, to have interoperability between the digital and physical domain, while still being doing super easy from your phone with regular payment methods and just ease of use with all the convenience of the market. And just a quick definition of how I see the NFTs. For me, they're just a certificate of authenticity, of provenance, of history, and of ownership. And of course, they add all the things that I mentioned before. You can interact with them in different ways that were not available before. But it's a simple concept. It doesn't have intrinsic value. It's just a tool that we use for the enjoyment of the other assets around.
يحضرني الآن جزء من أغنية لمحمد عبده، أشوفك كل يوم وأروح أحسن نظرة ترد الروح. غدا يعني سيصبح بإمكانك اقتناء أغاني معينة. بالأمس عندما يعني في الوقت المعاصر مع حضور منصات لعرض الأفلام في العالم، كثير من الحركة الشعرية تحولت إلى الحركة إلى الرواية أكثر. كون الرواية تدر دخل أكثر على الأديب أو على المثقف. اليوم ال NFT حتخلق حراك ثقافي مختلف. يعني بإمكانك شراء بعض الأغاني، بإمكانك شراء بعض الأشياء وتصبح رئيسية. بالأمس الشعراء ابتعدوا مثلا عن الشعر لأن اقتناء الشعر يصعب جدا. مع ال NFT سيصبح مثلا اقتناء الشعر موجود وحاضر وحاصل، وحينمي كثير من مجالات الثقافة المختلفة. حيخلق مساحات مرة مختلفة جديدة. أنا أتوقع أنه شكل ال NFT بعد سنة من اليوم سيكون مرة مختلف تماما عما نراه اليوم، في تسارع جدا لخلق قصص جديدة مختلفة تثري حياة الإنسان.
ميرسي، شكرا.
So just building on a point that Pablo made there, I see that, in the 18 years that I've been at Sotheby's, I have not seen anything, a technology like this, as or a change to the art world as exciting. I would liken this to when we started as Sotheby's as a company selling contemporary art back in the early 1970s, as an example. That was seen as an audacious move for an auction house, so for an auction house of fine art to be selling the works of living artists. When we started selling digital art, eyebrows were raised for sure. Selling NFTs, is it an artwork? Is it an art form? These questions have all been made, and over the course of the last year, that has been changed. And people, the adoption, the understanding, the belief in the medium as a way of enjoying digital art has vastly been increased, and we see that increasing. One of the elements we were talking about before about future, about adoption, we hear a lot about the metaverse. What is coming in this. Over the last 2 years in particular, during the, since the onset of the pandemic, people have been living so much more of their lives digitally. And then there are now these building platforms where people are living their lives even more digitally. One of the things that, just as an example, another use example of NFT technology is the idea of wearables for your avatars within, clothing. Chanel, many other major brands are issuing, dresses for avatars or wearables, clothes, hats, accessories. People are having a digital form, a digital life, a digital alternative in order to, so you see like the galleries that have been built in the metaverse for enjoying digital art, the technology behind that, the use of these, so Decentraland, where you'll see in our metaverse room, where Sotheby's has been exhibiting our digital art sales, and you can see the avatars walking around. These are individuals from the public who are attaching their wallet to this Web3 platform and then enjoying a digital representation of Sotheby's gallery in London, in Mayfair, with the digital art forms, and being able to see detail of the work of the piece, and then to be able to watch the live stream of the auctions there. And I see a lot of building of this. There's a lot of investment going in here. There's a lot of brands who are now buying space in the metaverse in order for the public to enjoy what is there to offer.
First of all, I can't tell you how old I feel that we're talking about the year 2030, even to begin with. And it's really exciting, and I agree with all of these things. And maybe just want to add that I had never been to Saudi Arabia before, so it's been an amazing experience. And we got to go to the old city of Al Tarif.
Al Tarif.
Al Tarif. And then also seeing the amazing skyscrapers and things that are being built, and knowing that the population here is so young. So my prediction is that there will be really new forms of artwork that we don't even know what they're going to be. Maybe they'll have augmented reality, virtual reality, they'll be in the metaverse, they'll be interactive. I think we don't know what they are, but that younger people, like the people here in such a fast-changing culture, are going to be the ones who develop those works. And I'm super excited to see them.
Thank you all so much for being on this panel, and thank you so much for imparting that much knowledge. I've learned a lot. I hope you guys have learned a lot as well. And I think we can now open the floor for questions. And I can see a lot. If we can pass around the mic. I usually see more hands, but today I see...
We've explained so many things.
Yeah, but we're getting the mics.
In the meantime, if you want, just to add to a little bit of both what you were saying, I think the importance of the digital domain, so the galleries in the metaverse are going to be a lot more important than what we expect them to be at this moment. People's life and how they portray themselves and what they showcase in these digital domains are going to be, in my opinion, as important or more to many of these individuals than their physical domain. So that is right, as you were saying that I completely agreed with you that the metaverse component is going to be a very, very important part of this growth.
So I'll take my first question and I'll move it along.
Yeah, so I think this question is actually for everyone. I'm just out of curiosity because also like I'm an investor in NFT, and I was always wondered, like for collectors, have you guys ever collected an artwork and then basically saw that floor price drop, and then and then basically did you just decide to keep the art, or did you just say maybe it's just going to rebound? So I want to see like what kind of strategy you guys do for this.
I never sell anything, so my answer's short.
If you want, I can a little bit answer. For sure, I've had some purchases that have gone down in price, and I think that really depends on why you're purchasing the works. There's a lot of participants in the ecosystem. I don't do this for money, so I don't even check the price or the floors or anything. And the work that I collect, they don't even have comparables in many cases. But it is true that a lot of people they do have that, and the way to many of them do sell, many of them keep it. And the way to really make money in this ecosystem is not when you sell; it's really when you buy. So my recommendation would be, take the time, do the research, get along, go into the community, really learn about the artist. If this NFT ecosystem, digital art ecosystem really allows you to get close to the artist in the way that traditional analog art wouldn't. And through that, you can, again, do the due diligence, learn a lot more, and be able to make those experiences. If what you're looking for is solely money, though, I would say that, that there's also many other asset classes within the NFT ecosystem that can be just as profitable or more.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have a question. I'm going to get to all the questions, not to worry.
Thank you very much. You are not alone in being ignorant about the subject. I have one comment and then I have a question. The comment is when the big players come into this issue, like the museums, I think this will be the kiss of death for them, just like when the banks get into Bitcoin. This is my comment. My question, and again, excuse my ignorance, you talked about digital real estate, digital land. How does that work? Because this is an asset. This is a physical asset. How does that work? And from that, we will measure on all kinds of assets, including art. How does it work? The digital land.
Okay, so again, I'm not a technologist, but I'll try to answer this question. We have found the way through technology, through cryptography, and through mathematics to create digital domains, so these digital worlds that can be divisible. And probably, when I say probably, it's not a probability, but rather that you can prove it. Probably scarce land, so that you can utilize the technology of the blockchain to actually mathematically prove that you have a piece of land. So you create these digital world. You divide it into different land plots that you would want to do it, and this is commercialized. You can purchase the land, and again, nobody can take it away. I can look into the blockchain and prove mathematically that nobody can take that away. I'm not sure if that was your question.
But the land itself is digital. It's not relating to physical land.
It's not a land.
It's not
an asset.
Not land as we think about it in the physical world. It's a digital land.
Virtual land.
Virtual land where people are building. They're building their virtual real estate. They're building buildings. They are showcasing, just like Sotheby's has a representation of its galleries in a land called Decentraland. It's all online. It's all recorded on the blockchain, and people in the real world are interacting with it.
It's the parallel. Yeah. It's a parallel world. It would be a parallel world. العالم الموازي, يعني a parallel world to the real world we're living in.
Yes. But again, if you put the goggles and you go inside, or if you go into the computer, there's many people like Sotheby's has that. I have many galleries and exhibitions in the digital world, and you can go in there and it's permanent, meaning I don't need to be there. I don't need to invite you there. There are worlds that you can access directly from digital devices. and whatever is built there, it's permanently there. And people can live through it. If you see somebody, I don't know, somebody that is in the United States now, and they connect to the same world, and I connect from here, I will be living the same experience with them. I will be next to them, enjoying. So we've done curated shows where we partner with an artist, we create a gallery in the metaverse, and then we have the artist, the curator, and many people from the audience interacting in the same way, or not in the same way, in a similar way than you would if you're coming here and watching the Biennale.
There's also NFTs used for real land, or discussions of having NFTs for the deeds for land, because if you lose the deed to your house, it can be quite serious. So it would be a great thing to have it on the blockchain where anyone can look it up. So I think that will happen. And that would be for real land.
أتوقع أنه أنا بتحدث عن منطقة ثانية مختلفة تماماً، وهي لها علاقة بأسلوب أو ستايل الحياة اللي أنت عشته. يعني الإيمان أساساً بالمنطق الافتراضي أو العالم الموازي لا يشابه، يعني ما تتشابه في الأجيال القديمة يصعب عليها فهم الأشياء اللي مش فيزيائية يعني، ويصعب عليها إدراك قيمتها وأهميتها، لأن تعاملهم أساساً مع هذا الموضوع مختلف تماماً. لكن الجيل الجديد اليوم يعني يقضي حوالي جل وقته أساساً على الإلكترونيات، ويعيش ضمن عالم افتراضي هو جزء لا يتجزأ من حياته. فإدراكه أساساً لهذه القيمة تخلق عنده، يعني مثل ما سامحني تمتلك أرض بصك، هو يرغب بامتلاك أرض بصك حتى في العالم الافتراضي. يعني نفس النشوة، نفس الحضور، نفس حتى القيمة اللي تصنعها. صعب إدراك هذا الموضوع يعني.
طب بالنسبة برضو يعني أعتبر أنا يعني مش كبيرة، يعني مش صغيرة، مش نعنوعة يعني، بس أنا مش عايزة أعيش في العالم الافتراضي، أنا عايزة أعيش في العالم ده. يعني ما أعرفش، يعني هو العالم ده حلو، يعني أنا ليه أعيش في العالم التاني؟ ده السؤال بتاعي.
الجميل في الموضوع كل الحاضرين سواء كانوا كبارا أو صغارا هم يعني خلونا نقول هم متقدمين في فهمهم، في فكرهم، في وعيهم، وفي تقبلهم للعالم الجديد. حقيقة كل أحد اليوم حاضر هو هنا هو قادر على إنه يتعايش مع فرص جديدة مرة في الحياة، وأنت واحدة منهم.
بحاول والله بحاول.
Mike, I have two questions. Question one, we've seen social media basically cut out the middleman. And so the creator of content and the person looking at the content can do it simultaneously anywhere in the world. And apparently, blockchain is doing that too. It's cutting off the middleman. How do you see the art space changing, and who's going to be cut out? Who's going to be in the middle of the ecosystem? How is the ecosystem going to look like? So and who are going to be the winners? Or what is it going to look like? That's question one. Question two, if we look, as Pablo mentioned, that NFTs are an asset class. And today, if I want to buy a piece of art or buy a land, etc., I'll go see it physically. I'll go to a museum, I'll go to a gallery, etc. How do I train myself to do that in the future? And what's the best medium to train?
So I think for digital artists, like this technology first is one of the first ways that a digital artist is able to assign value to their work. So it's had a revolutionary, I think, change for digital artists to be able to be recognized. And I think what's happening, if we look at like the values that we're hearing about in NFTs, which has taken a lot of press coverage, has really been like there's been a value lag in the absence of the technology, and this is catching up. So digital art's been around since the 1960s, but it's only now that it's been able to assign value in a marketplace. Going back to the question of cutting out the middleman, I think what it's been seen here is so many artists are able to go straight to market, where they're able to release their works directly on either an open source marketplace like OpenSea, or mint their own works on the platform and bring them straight to sale without going through a gallery or those kind of elements, or create a platform themselves working with a Web3 company and having their projects minted directly from them in a very primary way. But then there are also, as Anne was mentioning before, there are galleries that are existing in this world as well who are acting in the way that an intermediary used to. But I think through blockchain, there's a lot of uses where the lawyers are out because a lot of contracts are about showing that transfer of ownership. That's recorded instantly on the blockchain. It's immutable and it's seen by everyone. It's visible, it's transparent. So that's where the technology can really help there in speeding up transactions. What we're seeing is this transacting digitally takes away a lot of the friction of transacting with physical items. So if you buy a physical painting, we have to bring it in. It needs to be shipped. It needs to be condition checked. It needs to be photographed. It needs to be put in. It needs to be marketed. And then it's the reverse has to happen to it to go to the collector. This can all happen instantaneously. You can buy you can be buying an NFT in Australia right now, and it's in your wallet, with one click. That's where the speed of transactions and the efficiency is what's fueling the speed of this market transition.
If you want, I'll try to answer as well a little bit on the cutting the middleman. Just because we have the technology now that we can doesn't mean that we should and that everybody should. I think there's different depending on what you're doing. You should go one path or the other. The reality is that I cannot think of a single artist at the moment of the really successful artists that are really leading this movement that have even with the limited infrastructure that we have in the space that have done it directly through their audience and through minting in in their own smart contracts and in OpenSea, etc., etc. A lot of the big creators have had the help of this institution. So in particular, as it relates to art, as I mentioned before, I'm a huge believer that there's a lot of added value that many of these galleries, and not only galleries, that many of the participants in the art world bring to the ecosystem, and I'm a huge believer that they should participate. They will need to change probably their business model slightly, and artists will need to decide whether they want to go alone and pay a lower fee, or they want to have all these services and have a higher fee. The reality is that we're seeing a huge amount of artists that have tried. They were brought in with the promise of decentralized everything, direct artists to collector, and the reality is that they have less success than what they claim because there's an oversupply of artists and art at the moment in the ecosystem, and a lot of them are going back to galleries and saying, hey, let's work together on all the things that, we're expecting artists now to not only be artists, but to be PR geniuses, to be accountants, to be a businessman, to do all these things around that simply cannot do. And sorry, I forgot the second question, but
so you answer. The second question on where do I go to buy NFTs? So there are to learn. So one of the things we're trying to do is events like this, bringing people together to learn about what we're seeing in the marketplace. And there are a lot of forums for understanding digital art. So Discord is a sort of social media channel that is increasingly used, and Twitter increasingly used in the NFT and digital art space. And communities are being built around each project. Even in advance of them being released to the public. So when we were talking about whitelist before, there's a period in advance of an artist bringing their project to sale where a group of would-be collectors comes together to talk about the works, and then once they're released, they're immediately seeable, and then there's a discussion of who owns what, or what people think about the works, and then the community builds from that, and then utility is brought in many of these as well, like real-life meetups. So we have a Bored Ape in the gold ape that you see when you walk into the exhibition, and an example of that in Art Basel, the community around that project rented out a yacht and took a group of collectors by showing in their wallet that they were a holder, that they were able to access this in real-life event. And you're seeing a lot more utility come in these as well. So there's a lot of ways to digitally educate yourself. There's a lot of NFT forums and conferences that are increasingly. I think there was 5,000 people attended the Denver conference last week. That used to just have a few hundred people attending. The growth of these in real life events around educating people of what's happening in the market, it's happening so quick. You need to study and to understand, to know just what's there.
I think we have one, and I'll take there, and I'll come to you. And we'll come to you, but I'll start here.
Okay. Hello. First, خطر على بالي لما قلنا collection و collecting. قبل كنا نفكر بالطوابع وبالكوينز. إذا حدا بده يخلق NFT فرضنا بلش من الطوابع الملكية لأي بلد اللي كان. هل هو عنده الحق؟ يعني بدنا نحكي شوي إذا نحن عم نحول شيء حقيقي موجود لديجيتال وورد، في ملكية، في سيرتيفيكيتس بحق له كشخص كفرد ولا لا؟ نفس الشيء السؤال بينطبق على الارتس اللي بالميوزيوم او القطع الفنيه او الاثريه، هل بحق لنا نحولها لهالديجيتال وورد ونبيعها كفرد as an artist؟
ايوه، هي فكره الاي بي بتاعت القطعه الفنيه او فلوس قديمه، هل ده ممكن اقدر ان انا ابيعها ك NFT لو انا مش امتلك الملكيه بتاعتها؟ So if I don't have the IP of this, can I just sell it as an NFT?
No. The reality is that if it's a physical, if IP is physical, and you create the same way that you cannot create a T-shirt with, I cannot purchase tomorrow a Picasso and create T-shirts and commercialize it. You cannot do the same as long as it's not commercialized. However, you can indeed digitalize it for your own pleasure or for your own viewing, but not for commercialization. I'm not a lawyer though, so please don't take my word for this.
No, the intellectual property rights between physical and digital are no different. So where the IP holder owns those rights, if there is a replica of it that is brought to market without the rights, then that is governed by the same laws. That said, we are seeing museums, for example, considering making a digital representation of a work that's in their permanent collection that's not going to be brought to market in the future. There are elements of where that has had a marketplace. I think if someone has a physical painting that they have there are no IP rights because of the age of the artist passing and things like that. Just making a digital representation of that, keeping the physical, doesn't really have a marketplace. That's not, in the same way that you make a poster of a Van Gogh or something like that, it doesn't have a high value. Just by making that an NFT doesn't mean that it's going to have a very strong marketplace and assigning high values. One thing that, what I mentioned before, we are seeing these digital twins where there's a physical and a digital, and they're sold and collected and continue to be offered together.
يعني انا من الاول هقول لك حاجه، فكره رايت كليك سيف واعملها دي NFT ما بتشتغلش. حاولت فاشله، فكره فاشله، حاولت اصدرها بس ما حدش اتفق معايا.
بسبب سرعه الاندفاع لل NFT اني انا استغل الضعف بالقانون لحمايه هالارت اللي لهم، اني انا احولها لديجيتال وبيعها ليتر، فيهم يرفعوا دعاوى علي بس الحق بيكون معي مش هون.
مش هيكون معاكي عشان الانتلكتشوال
لا
بروبرتي.
حيكون معي لانه قانونيا منهم حامين حالهم.
ما اعرفش، بس اعتقد كلهم حامين حق.
هلا اكيد هي ما عم نحكي يعني اذا اخلاقيا لا، بس اخر النهار we are in a digital world.
Just a comment, you won't be able to do that because, well, you can keep the NFT and the ether or whatever currency is used for payment. You'll have controls on changing that to the currency that you use for daily living. So you'll get stuck there even if you want it.
I'll take the two questions in the back and then I'll come to you, sir.
Yeah, hi. I have a component of two questions. It's coming from an artistic perspective. So the first question is, has been any evidence of like any NFT art has been sold as NFT and comes with it as well a physical, like a canvas or anything else? I would like to know that. The second question is for the OpenSea and also Rarible.com, like they all have like website for NFTs. Is there a way like for artists when they upload their art, they can do like a stock share when they can put like more than one owner, like if they want, like if you want 10 or 20 or and so forth? That's my questions.
The answer is yes to both of those things. There are NFTs that have physical counterparts, like in addition, it might not be the same. Right, and there's even a word for it, phygital. So that's definitely being done and I think is really interesting. And there's a site called fractionalize.art where you can fractionalize ownership of your images.
Thank you.
there's someone in front of you who has a question.
Just a quick thing, please. As an artist, and just a recommendation, if you really want to come into the space, my strong recommendation, if you're an artist, a creative, is to consider other alternatives that are not the two that you mentioned. And if you want, we can talk later, and I can, yeah.
Yeah, hi. We all know that the blockchain is permanent, and anything that happened to it is permanent, and no one can change it. So for the NFTs, can we see future utility that when you buy something physical as like a brand or Rolex or whatever, and you get like an NFT attached to it to authenticate it, or like, you know, that you are the actual owner and it's not like a copy or a replica or whatever? That's my question.
You know, I heard this discussion very early on, like maybe 4 years ago at the Art Business Conference, about how blockchain technology will be tied with provenance, which will help a lot in terms of provenance of old master paintings and with impressionist paintings. And I think that's my take on it, but I'm happy to hear everyone else's take.
I think that's already happened with some luxury goods.
It does happen. I do think that in particular it relates to all masterpieces in art and everything. The premise of the blockchain and immutability is that we can mathematically prove that once something happens in the blockchain, it doesn't get removed from the blockchain. However, in this particular case, when you're talking about the physical, we need very creative ways to make that tie with the physical component as well, because, you know, as much as I am personally a big fan of what Sotheby's does, and I certainly trust when they have a certificate, I certainly trust that. But it's a slightly different way of certification. One is a mathematical proving, another one is trusting an institution, a very trustable one, but trusting an institution. When you cannot utilize the blockchain to make that trust, while in many cases it can work, it's not the optimal solution. So I'm not sure of how much is going to be represented of previously made works. What I do think is that everything that's created from now moving forward, particularly the digitally native items that are created moving forward, not only art, but any digitally native art item will be alongside an NFT for sure.
And there's a company called Verisart that's all they do.
Yeah, there's an example where a very deep imaging of a physical work can be taken, like a very deep scan with multiple cameras, and then that could be redone in front of the same physical work and see that the two together. But like Pablo was saying, it's not, you know, it's not perfect yet, and there's no sort of perfect industry standard yet that has had full adoption of that.
Can I take your question, and then I'm going to come to you, and I'm going to come to you as well.
Okay, great. Very interesting discussion. Thank you all for talking. I have two questions. The first one is for the collectors in the auction house of how do you all go about in this world ocean of NFTs figuring out, or the process of you guys selecting what you would like to collect? What are the criteria? Where do you look? What are the, you know, if I, for instance, or I are working with an artist, or I'm an artist and I'm going to create an NFT, you know, I kind of want to understand from you where you're looking for these NFTs, or how to get my NFTs in front of you, or to go to the places you'd look. That's the first question. The second one is totally just related, but I think an interesting question is because you mentioned earlier Sotheby's from, you know, kind of the coming of contemporary art before, and art has traditionally been an asset class that you looked at for a while. It wasn't taxed very well, and it's become more taxed over the years. NFTs right now is a not very taxed asset class. So I'm curious the perspective of how much of the value right now in the NFT market you think is due to it being the Wild West, where there's not much taxation and not much regulation, and how long till you see that similar type of taxation regulation coming in, and how will that affect, will it affect, or by that time will it not matter, the market? I know those are two totally separate questions. So the first one is, how are you guys going about finding these NFTs?
How are we curating our NFT sales?
The collectors, yes.
How are the collectors buying NFTs?
How are they figuring out, amongst all these NFTs?
Or how is Sotheby's including NFTs in our sales?
I think we can do both.
Yeah? So there are two questions?
It's more of how would an organization like Sotheby's or a collector decide amongst all the NFTs which ones to collect, because I think they're obviously being really refined to how they're collecting. So how are they going about it?
Okay.
So I think this really depends on what type of collector and what position you're in the space. But the reality is that a lot of the things really compare to the traditional ecosystem. The only thing is that the person is a little bit different. So again, a lot of the artists that are embedded in this world, in the digital art world, they're very active, they're very social, they're building communities, they're always engaging in Twitter, in Discord, in different places. So personally, my journey is I don't collect works. I support artists, and for that I go through the process of always either meeting the artist or the people associated to the artist, learning about their past, hearing about the future, their vision, and seeing how, in general, a body of work that they're producing relates to their career. Very, very similar to how another traditional collector does it. I personally don't have a particular style or technique that I focus on. I always try to support those artists that are pushing the boundaries at the highest level of their path that they have chosen in their regard. And of course, it needs to have that aesthetic connection that I think is important as it relates to art. But I guess the process is just learning about the career of the artist and your connection to the work and how that work fits. So it's just that the channels are different. And jumping to the second question of taxation, I think it's a little bit of in general a fallacy. I mean, I'm certainly getting taxed this year for my activities in the NFT ecosystem, and I think that eventually there's no way to hide, because you can be very creative and do things within the blockchain ecosystem, but if you ever want to translate that money back into your life, you're gonna hit a roadblock there, and it's gonna build up. So my recommendation, if you're doing this and your country taxes you for it, you should be paying your taxes and thinking about the consequences. And actually, we're gonna see what happens in the next month and a half of the ecosystem because of this.
Sotheby's, would you mind?
So I think when you said it's the value coming from the fact that there's no, the lack of regulation, I think it's more been driven by the value lag that I was mentioning before, that without this technology, ascribing value to this type of art was not there. And that coming in has seen the driving up of values, because as people come in and all collecting at once. In terms of collectors, just like in the traditional world, we have collectors who collect across multiple categories, or they might be collecting a very thin slice of one category because they focus in on a particular area. They only collect medieval manuscripts between 1420 and 1429, and that's it. Or they collect across luxury items and and different genres of art. And I think it's the same with NFTs as well. Whether people are looking into the more collectibles and they're looking at rarity, or they're looking into the one of ones because they're looking at a particular provenance, or they're looking at a particular blockchain or a particular use, or they're looking for the utility. So I think it's very personal, those collecting tastes. What Sotheby's, I think, brings to this as a marketplace is a curation. So Sotheby's, over the last 278 years, has been assessing the market for which category we're selling and seeing what has longevity, which has historical significance, what's available on the market, what Sotheby's can stand behind in terms of authenticity, in terms of quality. So we heavily curate our sales of NFTs to bring what we think is what collectors are looking for of that day.
Thank you.
And you collect very specific artworks.
I think I've been collecting for so long and in the field of digital art specifically that probably my perspective doesn't represent someone who's just starting out. But if you are just starting out, I recommend the weekly write-ups of 10 great pieces to look at on Super Rare, which come out in their editorial feature every week. And you can look at the artists that are in the top pages and trending on the different platforms. And also on Twitter to see what big drops are coming, what drops are on Nifty Gateway, which has a lot of the big name artists. Just the way you would go to galleries, a gallery that has a good reputation, and see who's showing there.
Thank you so much.
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everyone. My question is, after if I buy the NFT, after I buy it, where should I keep it? Do I just keep it in the platform? How I prevent the hackers from hacking my ownership of the NFT, or if the platform got bankrupt, where is my NFT?
Your NFT, you should put in a hardware wallet, like a Ledger or a Trezor, and you should not keep it in your MetaMask wallet.
I have a slightly different view. I do agree for those that you're actually purchasing directly in a decentralized marketplace, that's actually the best way to do it, or even institutional custody, which some, depending on which works you're buying, some entities starting to accept NFTs and institutional custody. But I personally, again, I'm a big believer in user experience, making this easy for everybody to participate, and I think that the current ecosystem is not ready for people. You really have to be very technical for there. So if you're actually buying platforms in NFTs in platforms that are making this process easier, like it's the case of Nifty Gateway or the platform that I'm involved with myself, it's called Arist, my strong recommendation is to keep it there. I feel a lot more secure for the average person that doesn't have a full understanding of the blockchain, with the security of some centralized institutions than with the ability to, you can lose the words to your ledger, you can get it broken, you can, you need to know how to work with the ledger if you're going to use it.
I think I have time for 2 more questions. So one, and then I'll come to you.
Good evening. Yes. I'm Abdullah Al-Saud, founder of Dream Makers Labs, Web3 development company. I would like to ask a question, and I would like to elaborate on the gentleman's question on digital real estate. If you don't mind, I will start to elaborate further.
Please.
Yes. The gentleman's question was the difference between physical and digital real estate. What people usually miss when they explain is digital real estate was there since the early 2000s in games. When you play a game, you buy a land, you build it, but the thing is, the company that you play the game in owns this land, even though you pay real money. Now, with blockchain and the beauty of blockchain, you own the land. No one owns it. So, for example, Club Penguin, it's a simple game. It got shut down, and all of the real estate in it and goods went with it. So this is the beauty of the blockchain and the digital real estate. My question is, you mentioned flippers, and in a sort of way that it's negative to the market. But flippers usually boost up volume in the collections. And the collection, when it has more volume, it means there's more traction and more people come in. Can you elaborate more? Why do you see it as a negative thing other than bots?
I think I saw it as a negative in the traditional art sense, I don't think you saw it as a negative, right?
Yeah, no.
She doesn't see it as a negative. I see it as a negative in the traditional art sense when someone is able to access an artist early on and is able to buy it for, like, let's say, who was able to buy Julie Curtis at $4,000 and they knew all the insider information, and then they can sell her for $400,000. Like, I see that damaging to the artistic career in the traditional art sense. But I don't know about, like, but it's from a traditional art perspective. I don't know about the NFT world. Like, that's a different world.
I think it is different in the NFT world.
And in the traditional world, an artist is not normally releasing 10,000 works, for example, like they may in a PFP project. So, the volume of the items in there, it has a completely different way of looking at it in that way.
We'll also see, though, I think with touching back a little bit of what you're saying, I think royalties are a fantastic innovation, the most important, really, innovation for the creators in this space, but I do think that they need a reworking, and that will change. Supply will go down once royalties are changed to only being applied when the work is sold for more than what it was purchased for, and when they also include the collectors to go into the space. But what you were saying about speculators have been great. As I said at the beginning, it has been the way of why they have become to where they are. It's just like in any market, you need different type of participants. And if it's only speculators, then you have no base of collectors that's actually going to maintain the value over time. Speculators usually have a much shorter time frame to which they will come in. And they do a very important role, which, by the way, they're not only, I don't know, but speculators and flippers are a huge component as well of the traditional art world. It is true that there's less supply, but I know a lot of people that participate in the art world just as speculators.
Thank you. I would like to add, if you don't mind,
yes,
about newsletters. There are 2 newsletters that I think everyone should subscribe to: The Drop and Medici Minutes by Cosimo Di Medici. I think you guys should look at it as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we have one more question here, and that's it for questions, I think, because I'm running out of time.
Good evening. This is Ragid Abdel Khaliq from NetVariant. We recently launched a new project like Bored Apes community. My question is, since we are a technology company, how do you have any suggestion or recommendation or kind of collaboration how to expand or market such communities, since NFT target audience are still very small community? Do you have any suggestions on how to boost this?
I'll let other people. I really have a lot less understanding of the collectible side of the NFT space, so I'll tell some of these other people. But what I'd say is like it's very important if we're gonna widen the audience overall, either in digital land, in collectibles, in art, or everything. We need to make it easier for the customers. We need to make it easier for the audience. So one of my first things that I would say is we need to conceptually start pricing in US dollars. We need to give people US dollars or any other currency, widely available currency, and we need to give people the ability to pay with different methods, because at the end of the day, right now, there's a lot of activity happening, but 95% of the volume in OpenSea is created by less than 5% of the wallets. So it's a lot of concentrated activity, and if we want to really expand that audience, my recommendation: build the infrastructure to make it easy for people to come in, because everybody wants to participate. They just don't know how. It's very technical. It's very difficult at the moment.
And in terms of the collectibles that we're seeing, I think the thing that is driving the longevity and the market, the individual markets for those projects, is really the community that's building around them. So getting the word out, using the Discord, the Twitter, the social media, the marketing that comes with it, and then assigning, you know, the other element of this is what comes with the NFT. Is there any utility? How the communication continues beyond the drop, you know, to keep that community building and keep it moving and keep it interesting, especially when there's so much competition in the market.
Okay, I stand corrected. Last question.
I have a question. Isn't it an easy access for money laundering? Like the Bitcoin. A lot of countries do not accept buying and selling Bitcoins through bank channels. So isn't it an easy access?
Again, I think that it's a little bit of a comment that is going around the world, and it's simply not true. I mean, if I was going to money launder anything that I don't, but if I was going to do so, there's so much easier to do it with cash. The reality is that there's many controls. Now we have the tools, the technological tools, to actually do deep analysis of the blockchain, and you know, there's chain analysis comes up with findings about blockchain activities all the time, and you're always going to have the problem of how do you translate that to real money. You always need a centralized institution to be that change to convert it into Riyadh, for example. How are you going to justify that you have those Bitcoin or those things? So yes, if you're embedded in only illegal activities, maybe you can get away with it, but I think you have other problems in general that are maybe a little bit bigger. But if you actually want to utilize it as a source of income, as a speculation, I think it's very, very, very difficult, if not impossible today, to money launder through it.
أحد الأشياء اللي قللت أصلا التفاعل مع مشروعنا السابق هي هذه المعلومة. يعني هذه المعلومة فيها من الجانب الصحيح، لكن يظل في الأخير دائما الأشياء يعني مثلما في ناس إيجابيين يحاولون يستغلون الأشياء بطريقة إيجابية، في ناس دائما سلبيين يحاولوا يستغلوا الأشياء بطريقة سلبية، بس دائما يعني ننظر للنظرة الإيجابية ونحاول مع بعض إنه نرسي مفهوم إن كل شيء فيه خير وفيه شر، و100% المستقبل يعني حيكون مشع ومشرق أكثر.
Again, I want to thank everyone for coming. It has been a lovely 3 days. I've learned so much. I hope you as well have learned as much as I have. I need to get on a whitelist. That's my conclusion. And I want to thank again the Ministry of Culture for hosting us in cooperation with the Visual Arts Commission. Sebastian and I talk about this we met with Dina maybe a couple of months ago, and then it became a reality, and I'm so happy to see us here, and I think this is the beginning of more to come, so thank you. Please make sure to see our exhibition, go into our metaverse and try to experience it. And there's the POAP on the screen, so make sure to scan. And am I missing anything about this? No. So Sebastian's gonna...
Yeah, for the next 30 minutes, this will be up on the screen, and you can add either, if you have a digital wallet, you can put your wallet address. If you don't, you can put an email address, and a proof of attendance protocol, which is an NFT that says that you have attended this forum, can be downloaded and stored.
To the Web 1 people, like when you went to a concert, you kept your concert stub, and this is your concert to keep the memories of the concert stub on your digital world. So thank you again so much, and thank you all for joining us on this journey, and with more to come. Thank you.